Have you ever looked at a high school classroom and just wondered, what is going on? Why do so many boys seem to be struggling to keep up while their female classmates are often pulling ahead? Well, it's a huge puzzle, and today we're going to dig into the neuroscience to see if we can find the missing piece.
And we're not just talking about a small difference in grades here. We're talking about a really significant academic gap. And it has real, lasting consequences for millions of young men trying to figure out their place in the world.
So, let's just put the main question right out there. Why are boys falling behind their female peers in so many schools? This isn't just some minor trend people are noticing. It's a major, growing divide that we really need to understand.
And just to give you an idea of the scale we're talking about, get this. In some places, nearly 1 in 4 boys, that's 23%, is classified as having some form of developmental disability. Now, when you see a number that high, you kind of have to stop and ask, right? Is the problem really with almost a quarter of all boys? Or could it be a problem with the system they're in?
Now look, there are plenty of theories floating around. Some people point out that, 3 out of 4 teachers are women, and that might create some kind of bias. Others say it's about lower social expectations for boys. And hey, those things probably play a role, for sure. But what if there's something much deeper, and maybe even simpler, going on? Something rooted in biology, and crucially in time.
And that's exactly where we're going. Because according to a whole lot of research, the real answer isn't just in the classroom, but it's deep inside the teenage brain itself, which, it turns out, is going through this massive internal battle.
The psychologist Lawrence Steinberg just nails it with this quote. He basically says the teenage years are this constant tug of war. On one side, you have the part of the brain that's screaming for new, exciting, and yes, sometimes risky stuff. And on the other side, you have the part that's supposed to step in and say, whoa, hold on a second, maybe let's think this through.
Okay, here's a super simple way to picture this. Think of a car. The sensation-seeking part of the brain, that's the accelerator. It's all about speed, rewards, go to the party. The impulse control part, well, that's the brake. It handles long-term thinking. The part that says, dude, you really need to study for that big exam.
And here's the thing, during the teen years, that accelerator is pushed to the floor. As the Stanford neurologist Robert Sapolsky puts it, the teen brain is just swimming in dopamine. That's the chemical that makes you feel reward and motivation. The brake system, which is up in the frontal cortex, is basically still being built. It doesn't stand a chance against that kind of engine.
Okay, so this is where it gets really, really interesting. Because this whole internal fight between the gas and the brake, it actually plays out differently for boys and girls. And when you look at it through this lens, a huge difference pops right out. It turns out, for boys, that gap between the super powerful accelerator and the still developing brake is way wider. You could pretty much say they've got more gas and less brake during these incredibly important years. Let's look at the science behind why that is. So, the brain's brake pedal is located right up front in what's called the prefrontal cortex. People call it the CEO of the brain because it handles all the big executive decisions, planning for the future, weighing consequences, and reining in your impulses. It's the little voice in your head that says, hey, maybe starting that huge paper tonight is a better idea than waiting till 2 a.m. So if the prefrontal cortex is the brake, then the most important question is, when does that brake get fully installed? And this right here is where the science shows us a really clear, undeniable gap in the timeline.
On average, that prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain, finishes maturing about 2 years later in boys than it does in girls. Just let that sink in for a second. For 2 of the most important years of high school, girls are, on average, operating with a much more developed impulse control system than the boys sitting right next to them.
And it's not just the prefrontal cortex either. We see the exact same pattern in another key part of the brain called the cerebellum, which helps manage emotions and thinking. In girls, it hits its full adult size around age 11. But for boys, they don't get there until about age 15. That is a 4-year difference.
It also sounds a little weird, but for your brain to get smarter and faster, it actually has to get a little smaller in some ways. The process is called pruning. The brain trims away unused connections, kind of like trimming a hedge to help it grow stronger. And you probably guessed it, this super important cleanup job also happens earlier for girls.
All of which brings us to this absolutely perfect, if maybe a little nerdy, comeback. For any teenage guy who's ever heard the question, why can't you just be more like your sister? Well, now you have a 100% scientifically accurate answer. It just perfectly grounds all this complex science in a moment I think a lot of us can relate to.
So what does all this brain science actually mean for the real world? Well, it leads us to a really tough question. Is it possible that our entire modern school system is, completely by accident, built on a timeline that just happens to favor the way the female brain develops?
Because here's the real kicker. This developmental mismatch, this 2-year gap in the brain's CEO, it peaks right during the high school years. That's the exact moment when your GPA, your test scores, and just staying out of trouble have the biggest possible impact on your entire future. I mean, the timing really could not be worse.
So, look, if you only remember one single thing from all of this, please let it be this. The key difference we are talking about is not how male and female brains develop. The biological roadmap is pretty much the same. The whole game-changing difference is when. The entire developmental schedule is shifted.
So let's just lay it all out one last time. The what? Male and female brains follow a similar developmental path. The when? Female brains hit those maturity milestones about 2 years earlier. And the huge, critical so what? Our school system, its deadlines, its expectations, it is out of sync with the biological timeline of so many boys.
Now, this is really important to say. This isn't about blaming anyone. This was not some grand plan. The system was mostly designed by men, but for a totally different time, when girls, frankly, had far fewer opportunities. As those barriers have rightfully been torn down over the years, this hidden biological advantage for girls within this particular system has suddenly become crystal clear.
And so that leaves us with one final and pretty challenging question. We have a system that demands top-notch impulse control and future planning, right at the exact moment that many boys' brains are simply not wired to deliver it. So, if the very structure of our schools is fundamentally misaligned with the neuroscience of half the students, what needs to change?